Today, let's talk about cancer, or rather, what causes cancer, carcinogens. So, what is a carcinogen? The NIH defines it as a substance, organism, or agent capable of causing cancer. Today, there are over 500 substances that are identified as either definitive, probable, or possible carcinogens for humans. They can be physical, such as radiation, chemical, such as tobacco smoke, or biological, such as viruses. The likelihood of a carcinogen causing cancer depends on the amount and duration of exposure, other environmental factors, and your genetics. They usually act by changing a cell's DNA, but they can also act through other ways, such as causing rapid cell division. Let's talk about alcohol as an example. Alcohol can increase the risk for cancer through three mechanisms. It can increase the production of acetaldehyde, which when overaccumulated can cause irreversible DNA damage. It can also increase circulating estrogen levels, which can cause abnormal development of breast tissue, increased cell production, and DNA damage. Lastly, it can affect absorption, altering cells in the mouth and throat, and can act as a solvent for other carcinogens such as tobacco. So how do we determine what is and isn't a carcinogen? First, we need to choose which substances to even test. Since there's an infinite amount of things to test in the world, scientists base their choice on what we already know about chemical structures, lab tests that have already been done, common human exposure, and epidemiology that shows associations between certain cancers and groups of people. Once a substance is chosen, the first test is done on lab animals in high doses. Then the results lead to the carcinogenic categorization of the substance. The IARC, or the International Agency for Research on Cancer, lists 4 categories of carcinogens. There's Group 1, which is definitive, Group 2A, which is probably carcinogenic, Group 2B, which is possibly carcinogenic, and Group 3, which is not classifiable as a carcinogen. The NTP, or the National Toxicology Program, is a similar organization that has its own classification system, slightly different, but more or less the same information. So here are some important things to remember about carcinogens. Number 1. Exposure to a carcinogen does not necessarily mean you'll get cancer, but in general, the less exposure the better. Number 2. Most carcinogens listed are linked with certain types of cancer, but not all types. And number 3, just because something is a carcinogen doesn't mean you should avoid it or that you can. For example, sunlight UV rays are a commonly known cause of skin cancer, but that doesn't mean you can never go outside again. It just means you should use a preventative measure against it. Another example is tamoxifen. Tamoxifen is another carcinogen known to increase the risk of uterine cancer. However, it's a very useful breast cancer drug. It's all about cost and benefit analysis. Now, what are some common associations with cancer? Let's make this a bit of a trivia game. First question: can your attitude affect the development of cancer? The answer is maybe. We know that stress has strong physiological effects, such as increasing blood pressure, heart rate, blood sugar, the fight or flight system. In chronic stress, it can cause more effects, such as weakening the immune system. Glucocorticoids, which are released during stress, have been found to inhibit apoptosis, which is a process that can help kill cancer cells. It can increase the spread of cancer, and it can increase resistance to chemotherapy. That being said, research has failed to show a direct link between stress and cancer. There could be an indirect link, such as the development of poor habits from chronic stress. Stress might lead to more frequent smoking, overeating, and social withdrawal, but overall, the research is mixed and the findings are weak. Next question: do cell phones cause cancer? The answer is no, as of now. There are associations between ionizing radiation and many cancers, particularly leukemia, breast cancer, bladder cancer, colon, liver, lung, esophagus, etc. Cell phones, however, emit radiation that falls within the non-ionizing range of electromagnetic spectrum. The only concern that could viably come up with cell phones is the heating to a specific part of the body, notably the ear or the head. But this heat is not strong enough to increase the core body temperature and therefore doesn't have concernable effects. Other products that emit non-ionizing radiation include microwaves and radios. Okay, last question. Many listed carcinogens are in ingredients that are consumed on a daily basis for some people, such as aspartame. So, should you avoid products with aspartame because it's listed as a possible carcinogen? Technically, there's no right answer, but the FDA sets the dangerous upper limit of aspartame consumption to be at 50 milligrams per kilogram per day, meaning if you weigh 132 pounds, you'd need to consume 75 packets of aspartame a day to be considered at risk. So use your judgment, but I wouldn't be too concerned. Just know what kind of substance you're talking about. Here we're talking about a Class 2B carcinogen, but I'd be more careful when it comes to Class 1. In conclusion, we are surrounded by cancer-causing substances, but the when, what, who, where, and why is a bit more complicated. At the end of the day, we only know as much as we know. New information is discovered all the time, and a lot of developing information about cancer is longitudinal. Just because something doesn't cause cancer through a mechanism we're familiar with right now doesn't mean it can't cause damage another way. Likewise, be careful to make conclusions about things that valid research has yet to show. Act with caution, but don't believe everything you read. People like to make strong claims, avoid this, avoid that. But there is research done all the time to tell us what we do and don't know, and it's important to look out for both. Lastly, prevention starts today. This can range from avoiding the product altogether, to limiting exposure, to simply being safe around it and understanding what it is. Don't use tobacco, limit alcohol consumption, get vaccinated, wear sunscreen, and the rest is up to you.